right. Hi, guys. Thanks so much for having me and joining this session in such a large quantity. So over the next 25 minutes, I'm going to speak to you a little bit about all the wonderful things that can be done with today's smart devices deployed in an enterprise context, and in this specific example on what can be done with data capture solutions running off of these devices towards helping with enterprise transformation and visibility creation for retail and supply chain organizations. So with this, just a brief word about Scandit itself. We are a leading data capture platform solutions company operating across the globe with offices and headcounts in the US, in London, as well as Zurich in Switzerland. We have a very broad customer base, which I'm going to show you guys here. So these are just some of the large brands that we're happy to work with around the globe. One specific example here from a sort of a logistics and supply chain delivery context, and a recent customer, for example, is PostNL, whom we are supporting to enable their mail business unit to move away from traditional scanning equipment and to fully embrace smartphone technology in a BYOD fashion. So we're helping them and their mailman to deliver all the mail to people's households in the Netherlands in a very, very flexible fashion, so enabling more than 30,000 of these mailmen in a BYOD way, where otherwise the Dutch Post would have to procure thousands and tens of thousands of devices, which at this point is not necessary any longer. Okay, so now let's take a close look at what we're doing in particular and how we're helping organizations for specific scenarios. So what we're talking about here when we're saying data capture is typically devices like this guy here, right? So you've all seen these. They're not too much fun to work with. Very big, clunky, and typically fairly dated devices that still come with a very high price tag. So a device like this still costs between $1,500 and $3,000, depending on the actual model. They oftentimes still run Windows CE, Windows Mobile type operating systems. More recent versions run not quite the most recent versions of Android, but still the whole concept is on a dedicated piece of specialized hardware equipment, which, as I think you all know, is of course getting much more pressure from the likes of smart devices, smartphones, tablets, and more recently also wearables or other types of smart devices. Now, what's the problem with these devices besides the fact that they are dedicated devices? Again, one thing is that their operating systems are fairly limited, which makes it hard to deploy them effectively and build solutions for these devices. Two, the whole software tool stack is similarly dated, which again results in long time to market and lead times in building and deploying solutions out there. And overall, the whole philosophy of having a hardware device that needs to be procured and managed over a lifetime is something that more and more companies are trying to move away from. And this has broad applicability across the entire supply chain. With Scandit, we are trying to break up this dependency and help our customers move away from the dedicated device model to fully embrace a smart device-based and completely hardware-agnostic philosophy, which allows our customers to pick and choose from a very broad set of devices, like the most recent iOS device to a low-cost, more specialized Android device, maybe one that has a rugged shell to offer better damage protection, or that comes with specialized accessories to support a particular use case. So the options and choice is very broad at this point, and what we specialize in is the actual software components and the cloud services that make it very, very easy to harness the full power of the mobile platform and these smart devices to make enterprise operations more effective. Now, let's be a little more specific, and let me talk a bit about some of the examples on how companies and customers are leveraging these smart devices. Of course, when you look at sort of the specific characteristics of the traditional approach, you see a user experience that isn't up to the standard of a modern smart device. And of course, this is sort of the first area where these smart devices really shine. Second, and a little less obvious, and maybe sometimes even debatable, is the total cost of ownership of a device. Now, obviously, a device like this, at the price points that I mentioned, $1,500 to $3,000 a piece, come in much higher compared to even the latest iPhone 6 or 7, right? Now look at an iPod Touch or look at an Android smartphone, which could be $200 a piece, and this becomes quite a stark contrast. But when you think about it, you may think, and obviously that's what's often discussed, is that okay, these devices, they might break more often, right? And thereby the lower purchasing costs could be offset. Now, luckily, that isn't quite the case. So even taking into account a slightly higher breakage rate, the high cost of the traditional model cannot be offset by slightly higher breakages of smart devices. In addition, there is on the market available today a broad set of options to ruggedize smartphone by means of specialized casings, as you all know, and there are also specialized smartphone vendors out there like Kyocera, Sonim, Janam, just to name a few, that have specialized their offerings around providing smart devices for specific enterprise verticals, healthcare, logistics, transportation, for example. So with this, it is possible, and this has been widely documented already, to reap a 3 to 5x TCO benefit from the use of smart device technology within an enterprise context. And if you think about this sort of in an actual numbers, it's actually quite extreme. So for example, if you run an organization that depends on 1,000 devices of this kind today, and you're coming up a replacement up on a replacement cycle, and instead of taking on another round of these devices that has roughly a 6,000 to 8,000 total cost of ownership at the hardware level alone, and replace those with a $2,000 total cost of ownership option on the right side, you can save between $4 and $6 million just on the hardware, right? And that doesn't include accessories, that doesn't include the software stack, which again is easier to build for on the right-hand side. And the reason why it's easier to build for is obviously these are multi-purpose devices. They're optimized for user experience. They support, as I mentioned, flexible deployment models that don't just depend on the availability of a dedicated company-managed device, but can leverage a pure BYOD or mixed strategies just as well for application deployment. And this is why these types of smart devices have so much appeal out there in the market. Now, VDC Research, one of the leading analysts in the data capture and enterprise mobility space, has recently, as recent as 1 year ago, conducted a survey where they went out and asked operational decision makers and IT decision makers about their plans in replacing traditional data capture equipment. And as you can see, a pretty whopping majority here of respondents has either plans or has already made a decision to move completely away from the traditional dedicated scanning model to fully benefit from the power that smart devices can offer to the organization. So that's quite interesting. Now, when you think about it a bit more, right, we talked about the ruggedness, TCO benefits that route might offer. When you think about this a little more, then you may think, okay, user experience, I get it, right? Everyone has a device in their pocket, you play the games, you all enjoy this, and this is very natural and intuitive, so, okay, understood, right? operating system and software development stack, perfect, right? Everyone gets that as well. Everyone would like to benefit from this as well. And then obviously, yes, TCO benefits, right? I'm happy to provide more information here, but trust me, these are well established. Now, when we're talking about data capture and these dedicated devices, then of course scanning itself is a core sort of gatekeeper functionality that has traditionally sort of really like provide very strong justification for the presence of these traditional data capture tools, right? And then of course, even if you manage to find a way to do that on a smartphone, then you would still need to think about battery life while scanning, or durability, or sort of the ergonomics. If you have to do something like not just a few times a week, but hundreds of times a day, different story. And so that's what I'd like to sort of like show you first, is sort of the state of art of software-based data capture purely through the camera on a regular smartphone. And this is what you're seeing here. And this is also what sort of at the core Scandit is sort of like based on. So you see typical situations that a worker would encounter in a warehouse, out there on the street making a delivery. And this is real-time, unedited footage that show how any kind of smartphone, in this case an iPhone 6, can deal with this. Funnily enough, here on the range example, it is actually the case that today's state-of-the-art smartphones, iPhone 6s, 7, or Samsung devices, can support a much longer range than traditional scanning equipment, even specialized laser or CCD imager equipment, except for those very specialized, very expensive types of scanners that you use in a warehouse setting. And even very sort of like dark and low light environments can be supported. So I'm showing this to really give you a sense for what is possible today. And again, as a sort of a gatekeeper capability, this is really solved and has been overcome. Again, I did mention battery life and durability as two other sort of fundamental areas that need to be addressed. And also here, we see very, very good results. And depending on the particular usage model, a very wide variety of use cases can be supported with today's smart devices without even extra battery packs or cases with extra juice. So in this example, it's sort of a continuous usage scenario and usage model that is supported, 7,500 scans on an iPhone 6 SE for a 10.5 hour operating time on a single charge. So I think you can see that, and this can be tweaked through software as well. So for example, there are specialized battery saving and energy harvesting modes that can be supported. And again, obviously are critical to enabling the use of smart devices in such a situation. And then of course, durability, I did mention the use of certain cases. What you can see here is also specialized smart devices that can be deployed in an enterprise or in a more hazardous environment. And again, there are plenty of options out there. So when the time comes up to sort of look at options as a replacement to traditional scanning equipment, there are many solutions out there, and we're also happy to help here. Ergonomics is maybe the last example I have here, and so again, when you look at the smartphone as a data capture tool, you may realize that obviously because the camera is downward facing, it sort of requires you to hold up the device and scan in a certain fashion, which may or may not be desirable depending on your particular use case, right? Standing in front of a shelf, scanning and capturing the data like this with a smart device may work perfectly. In other situations, you are more in a sort of like point and shoot scenario. This is less desirable. So what we offer here and others through different means is a way to essentially sort of like morph the smartphone form factor into something that's a little more flexible and more ergonomic for very high frequency use. In this case, a case that wraps around an iPhone as is displayed here. You can see there are two special aspects of the case here. So the first one is actually a mirroring system. So think about sort of the typical sort of periscope, right? So this is nothing else, so it's really a mirror. And then this is a very specialized piece of optics that effectively takes the LED of the camera embedded here in the smart device, redirects it, and creates sort of a typical sort of laser-like beam without actually having electronics incorporated here. And the way this looks like is shown in this next video here that I brought. And again, this is something that makes sense in situations where you have sort of increased requirements with respect to ruggedness, right? So the case adds some extra protection, and in particular, ergonomics, right? So the device really changes the feel of interacting with the smart device in situations where you have these sort of very high frequency forward scanning requirements, which of course not only improves on the efficiency of your workforce here and helps lower TCO by lowering breakage risk. It also, for example, limits the amount of strain on the wrist, and in that sense also supports a sort of a more high frequency data capturing environment. Okay, last example here on the technology side is really that what you see here is a HoloLens piece of digital eyewear, and this is now the actual view through the HoloLens from this person here, which just serves as a demonstrator to demonstrate that the exact same technology that is powering and driving these capturing experiences on smartphones and tablets can be equally deployed on other device categories, in this case like a HoloLens or a robot with cameras mounted. So the possibilities are really endless, and in that sense serve to democratize the use of capturing or data capture across an organization, really ranging from every individual's own device in a BYOD fashion all the way to sort of mounted fixed equipment installed in particular areas at gates moving in and out of a certain loading dock zone, for example, or again in a sort of a hands-free scenario as required, for example, in field maintenance, reordering scenario, delivery or picking where hands-free can really help speed up the efficiency of the workforce. So that's all I wanted to show, really just to help like educate everyone a little bit on what is possible nowadays with technology that we have at our disposal. And what I'm gonna walk you through next is just one example on how this technology is and can be deployed using our platform in a concrete customer scenario. So let's look at this sort of conceptually real quick. So first, of course, proof of delivery and pickup and delivery sort of in a broader setting is an application area that I think has been on the rise recently quite a bit, with increased requirements on the ability to prove that a certain delivery has been received within a given time frame, that the quality of the delivery was according to a given SLA, that the actual item wasn't damaged or in a certain state, and that this can be proven, for example, to an insurer in a claims management situation as well. So there are many reasons why companies are adopting or looking for solutions to solving this POD problem. Specifically, when we're looking at sort of deploying a mobile POD solution that puts that proof of delivery and pickup and delivery capability into your workforce's hands, and even allows them to use it on their own devices in addition maybe to a company-issued device. Obviously, the key advantages and benefits to enabling this on smart devices are as listed here, right? So really streamlining operations and taking full advantage of the capabilities of the smartphone, so combining communication with geolocation capabilities to associate each and every interaction, each and every event along such a POD workflow with a data point that can be transmitted to the cloud in real time and is available for later analysis, which again drives improved traceability, right? The ability to truly understand in real time what is going on, and not just sort of like at the conceptual sort of like should be type level, but really in real time to help streamline operations even more. And third, as mentioned before, lower cost, right? The use and deployment of smart devices in lieu of traditional data capture equipment with all its benefits, but also that very direct and strong cost advantage. Now, of course, as I mentioned initially, with BYOD as a sort of like an option, a lot of the customers and sort of situations we encounter have the benefit that obviously everyone has a smartphone in their pockets, right? So we're seeing not only improved adoption from a user and user experience perspective, but we're also in a position to sort of like more gradually introduce solutions and make those available to a broader sort of workforce directly on their own devices, and only then start to look at issuing devices to those employees that truly need it. So what are sort of the additional benefits of a cloud-based mobile pickup and delivery solution? In contrast, in this case, now not with a dedicated deployment of traditional scanners, but with a pen and paper-based solution, right? So when we're sort of talking to more sort of mid-market clients, what we're finding is that a lot of those, they still run off of pen and paper to a large extent. So they may have scheduling software in-house that sort of like tells their drivers where to go and where to bring items, but they're really not digitized in their operation to a very full extent. So we're seeing a lot of time being wasted in trying to figure out alternative routes because of traffic jams, for example, because the routing requirements have changed, or because of the pure time it takes for the driver to actually drop off an item and get that proof of delivery in a kind of a more manual fashion. And obviously, what is possible with a smart device solution is you just take that signature directly on the screen. You do the same with any kind of damages to the delivery that you need to record, right? Also here, one example that we often see is that customers, they of course, and their workers, their employees, they already use their smartphone to doing these things, right? They just snap a photo and take another one of a damage, but then they tend to email it in and have to like go, like grab the photo, store it somewhere, add some secondary documentation to it, and that's probably never making it into sort of a more centralized repository, right? So what we're helping with in these situations is to really sort of like offer an integrated view into that process that combines all the data points along the way, speeds up the actual core workflow, and again sort of like brings everything together. So the actual like moment when the delivery worker sort of delivers that parcel, scans off the label off of the item, snaps a photo to document the state of the image, and then gets that signature as proof. And all of this is sort of wrapped together and available in the database or written back into the existing IT systems. And of course, the result is lower cost quite directly as well. So you can actually maintain the same efficiency with less trucks, less workers, so quite directly. So you may be able to actually deploy your existing drivers for additional business or reduce the number over time. Now, typically, of course, we see that customers want to maintain their levels, but grow the business. So this is an example of such a POD solution, the way we provide it out of the box on top of our platform, and again, take care of all the sort of specific aspects that you need to deploy such a solution. So we have different types of screens to sort through and prioritize the deliveries of a single day, and this can be fed from your existing scheduling systems. For example, there is of course mapping integration, scanning and capturing capabilities directly embedded, and then that proof of delivery at the very end, amongst other things that I'm not showing here. Now on the cloud side, and obviously again, this is about also improving on the visibility and what to do with the data. So what is made possible through the platform is a variety of other things, right? For example, the ability to manage all these users and sort of switch people on and off as part of your workforce, invite them very, very easily without having to invest heavily in building out user management integration. This is all available. Then a POD-specific reporting dashboard and capabilities to extend that. So you have this real-time visibility into what's going on with your fleet of drivers, and you can actually drill down on these specific hubs and locations to see exactly what's going on specific to your workflow. And then at last, of course, we typically don't operate in a pure standalone manner, but we integrate with an existing IT ecosystem. So we oftentimes integrate with SAP type deployments or Dynamics types of ERPs. So all of this is very simple and slick using our platform. And this is shown here more conceptually. Interesting. All right. Okay. So I'm not going to go into details here. So whoever is interested to learn more, you can find me outside here on this. I think what I'd like to briefly talk about to wrap this up is one very specific use case. So this is the example of Railcare, which is the fresh produce delivery organization that is powering Switzerland's second largest retailer, Coop Group. So overnight, Railcare, who runs a combined transportation and logistics network comprising of a large number of trucks and trains, they essentially send out their drivers, their truck drivers, to local suppliers to pick up all the fresh produce in specialized containers. These containers are then sort of driven once they're filled up with the daily rations of these suppliers. They're filled up and they're driven to centralized hub locations where they are actually loaded. The actual containers are loaded onto the railway, and from there they're moved to different hubs within the country, and from there sort of like moved to the 1,200 store locations that Coop Group has in Switzerland. This entire process, surprisingly, was pen and paper based to a large extent until recently. So a lot of this was essentially done statically, so the drivers would just learn about the routing for the next day, and they would be sent to these locations, and the entire exception handling throughout the process would be done in a largely phone-based manner, right? So it's kind of like help desk service, talking to these drivers to reroute them, to help them. Oh, you should go pick up something there. Oh, we forgot to tell you there is a bunch of pallets in this location. You need to take that back, and really a lot of manual work and very little visibility. So what we help them do is to really analyze that process and work out how to most effectively support that truck driver fleet with a mobile pickup and delivery solution that supports not only the drivers in like understanding where to go in the morning and sort of like what regular checks to do on the actual trucks, but to then go out to the suppliers, load up the produce, keep accurate track of all the pallets, all the containers that are loading onto the containers, and at the same time keep track of the containers as they are being moved throughout the country. Upon delivery at the destination retail locations, they essentially do the same in reverse again, right? They take back sort of empty pallets, they keep track of that, and suddenly Coop and Railcare understands how much of that is actually in motion, and again, damages to the actual produce, to the trucks themselves. All of this is being integrated with the platform and the mobile solution as well. So all that data is really being pulled together and then visualized using dashboards that for the first time ever start to provide real-time operational business insights to the operational decision makers within the group. And again, of course, compared to the investment that would have been necessary to go with a traditional handheld scanner approach to move away from the pen and paper-based approach in the past, and instead adopting a smart device-based solution that offers much more flexibility and additional capabilities from the mobile device itself, right? The actual routing information, the communication capability directly built in, of course, adds to the appeal and dramatically saves scope compared to such a more traditional approach. So that's all I had to say. Thanks so much for the attention. If you would like to learn more, I mean, again, find us right outside at the Scandit booth. Come play around with our demos if you'd like, or make use of some of the white papers we publish on this and related subjects. We have some of those going into more detail on some of the TCO benefits. There is this one specifically about the broad use and deployment of such data capture solutions, or we have a specific one, for example, on POD and the related benefits as well. So thanks so much.